Coming to you live from our studios in Belize City, this is the evening news on Love Television for Tuesday, July 19th. To start things off, we'll take a look at the top stories for today. Tonight, we bring to you the story of the construction worker who was stabbed to death last night whilst socializing. We'll share with you the details of the court arraignment of the 5 men accused of killing Pastor Lucas and why the chief magistrate agreed to have them arraigned despite their attorney's submission. The 2 Bulgarian nationals who were convicted of stealing monies via ATM machines were back in court today. We'll also tell you why and what that outcome was. Belize has welcomed a new ambassador from West Africa, and over 24 police officers are being trained by their counterparts of Roswell, New Mexico. Investigators in San Ignacio are still looking for the murder weapon and the suspect in a homicide case that occurred last night in that municipality. Officer commanding the San Ignacio Police Station, Superintendent of Police Richard Rosado, spoke on the incident.
On Monday, the 18th of July 2016, about 6:50 p.m., acting upon information received of a stabbing incident in the Santiago layout area of San Ignacio Town, police visited a dirt road in the Santiago layout area where they saw the apparent lifeless body of a male Hispanic person lying face up in a pool of blood. The body was subsequently identified as Edilberto Morales, 33 years, Belizean construction worker of a Contiki address in San Ignacio Town. Our initial investigation revealed that after socializing and drinking, the deceased and another individual were walking on Floyd Morrow Street in Santiago layout area when they had a heated argument over a TV that one of the accused had loaned the deceased, which subsequently resulted in a physical confrontation where the deceased received 5 apparent stab wounds to the upper part of his body. The body was transported to the San Ignacio Community Morgue, where the medical doctor at the hospital pronounced him dead on arrival. The scene was processed, statements are being recorded from eyewitnesses, 2 persons of interest detained, and police are looking for 2 other persons of interest. The body now lies at the morgue awaiting a post-mortem examination.
Up to news time tonight, authorities are still seeking Nuri Polanco of an Antelope Street address as a person of interest in this investigation. Almost 4 days after the head of Pastor Llewellyn Lucas was found in the back of an F-150 pickup truck on Friday night, 5 men have been arraigned and placed on remand for the crime. It was just after 8 o'clock Friday night when investigators picked up the 5 men suspected to be responsible for the homicide. Yesterday evening, the men were taken before the magistrate in Belmopan, but no arraignment took place due to an issue of jurisdiction. The men were moved to Belize City after 5 o'clock yesterday evening to be arraigned in the Old Capitol, but due to some issues at the courthouse, it was put off to 9 o'clock this morning before Chief Magistrate Anne Marie Smith. This morning, the arraignment got underway just after 10 o'clock with the men's attorney Herbert Panton and prosecutors Bart Jones and Chester Williams. The participation in court this morning by Williams was a surprise, and as he explained, it was a last-minute move. Williams also filled us in on his submission to the chief magistrate as to why the men should be arraigned.
Basically, I was contacted by the commissioner yesterday evening and was told to deal with the matter of the arraignment. And considering the fact that the defendants do have attorney in the person of Mr. Panton, and he have made certain submissions at the court in Belmopan, it is only right that we match the defense in providing an attorney as well to deal with the matter from the prosecution side. Hence the reason I was allowed to step in and represent the prosecution in the arraignment today. There are certain matters that were raised by the defense that are of legal implication, and it was only right that we make legal submissions of those submissions that he made yesterday. Hence the reason I went and I did my legal research and came up with authority to guide the court as it relates to the fact that he was saying that there was not sufficient evidence, when on the face of it there is sufficient circumstantial evidence to indicate that these 5 men are indeed responsible for the death of Mr. Llewellyn Lucas. And when you look at the issue of circumstantial evidence, as I alluded to the court, that it ought not to be taken in a piecemeal fashion, but rather to be looked at wholesomely. And the court would then look to see where it points when looked at holistically. And that was what I did this morning before the court. And as I have said to the court, or as I point out to the court, that the issue of whether or not there is sufficient evidence is not a cherry to be had at this stage, but rather a cherry that is to be had either at the PI or a trial at the Supreme Court. The magistrate is dealing with the issue of arraignment, and yes, under the new rules, it did in fact stipulate that the magistrate is to look at the evidence to see if, on the face of it, it supports the charge. And the fact sheet that we presented clearly outlined the elements of the charges that the prosecution have preferred against the 5 defendants.
The 5 men, namely Ernest Castillo, Terence Fernandez, Ashton Venegas, Kieran Fernandez, and William Mason, were charged this morning with murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and kidnapping, as well as imprisonment of a person. Attorney Herbert Panton spoke to the media on what his submissions were this morning as he sought to delay the arraignment.
It was very simple. It was twofold. One, I submitted to the court that what they were doing is forum shopping. They got a decision in Belmopan that was contrary to what they wanted, and instead of adhering to the order of the court, they rearrested my clients and brought them here to Belize City to get the same result from a different magistrate. That is fundamentally forum shopping. It's like when you are a child, you go to mommy and ask mommy something, and you wait until mommy goes out of the room and ask daddy. That is what it amounted to. Well, she concluded that as chief magistrate, she has jurisdiction in all courts, but we were not arguing jurisdiction. The fact of the matter is that this matter was adjudicated on and decided on by one magistrate yesterday, and at the very least, the order of that magistrate ought to be adhered to before you come back to the court. On the face of the facts that is put before the court, there is not enough evidence. It is within the purview of the court to grant a 14-day adjournment to give the prosecution time, because that is the fundamental.
Yesterday, there was much disappointment rendered on social media when it was heard that the men were not arraigned in Belmopan and that the possibility of their release. Attorney Williams spoke of what occurred on Monday evening and his role in the future court dates.
It has a lot to do with the inexperience of the prosecutor who appeared in Belmopan yesterday. I don't think, or I don't want to say that there was any misstep yesterday. I guess that the police did an arraignment in Belmopan yesterday, and it was done the way how other arraignments has been done. But because of the sensitive nature of the offense and the fact that these men have legal representation, and Mr. Panton is right to make submissions on behalf of his client, that's what he's paid to do. And the court is also obliged to listen to his submissions, and if the submissions do make sense, are of legal implication, then the court must act accordingly, and that's what the court did yesterday. But I am not sure if I will be proceeding forward with the matter leading up to the preliminary inquiry. I was asked to come and deal with the arraignment today to be able to rebut those submissions that Mr. Panton had made in Belmopan yesterday, and that is exactly what I did today.
The 5 men were remanded to the Belize Central Prison. Disclosure date has been set for September 14, with case management scheduled for October 6 and 7 in Belmopan and Belize City, respectively. In the aftermath of Pastor Lucas's gruesome murder, the People's United Party issued a press release addressing its consternation on the issue. Information on William Mason, the suspected murderer, has been coming out since Saturday. The PUP states that they are, quote, appalled and seriously concerned regarding the information surrounding alleged criminal, conman, and heavily politically connected William Mason, end quote. The release goes on to state that the recent incident exposes major weaknesses in several critical government departments. The PUP considers it of great concern that Mason was a close acquaintance of prolific figures such as Minister of National Security John Saldiva, other ministers, and several members of the police department. Another reason of concern is that William Mason possessed legitimate documents that had seemingly been expedited. The PUP is calling for a thorough investigation to find out how a person with a shady past was able to obtain those documents. The PUP also believes that a red flag should have been noticed when 2 Mennonite persons were allegedly kidnapped and extorted by Mason. If an investigation would have been conducted then, says the release, Pastor Lucas may still be alive. The party also recommends that an international investigator be brought in to postdate the circumstances surrounding Pastor Lucas's macabre death. The reason for international investigation, says the release, is because the police may need to investigate current cabinet members. The release also stated that they are very concerned of reports that William Mason has been given special privileges as a result of his connections with high-ranking ministers in the government. The party is demanding that an explanation be given as to how Mason could have been hired by the City Emergency Management Organization, CEMO, to conduct training on their behalf. With William Mason and the other 4 men behind bars after being arraigned today, there is a long road ahead before there is a final outcome in this matter. As you heard earlier, the next court date is set for September, and that has to do with case management. After yesterday's episode in the Belmopan court citing jurisdictional issues, there is a sentiment that the case has already begun to fall apart and possibly may not make it to trial in the Supreme Court of Belize. Prosecutor Chester Williams spoke to the media on the evidence obtained and the continued investigation leading to a trial.
Mr. Panton is being paid by his clients to say certain things, and he eloquently outlined what his instructions were. And it is our duty to rebut those submissions, and I believe that we did well in rebutting them. If a matter of fact, the Chief Magistrate agreed with our submissions in how we rebutted what he had to say. So I hold no qualms about what Mr. Panton had to say before the court. It is our duty to lay out before the court what the facts are, and we did that. And this is no making up of no facts. Those are the facts, and we believe that moving forward as the investigation develops, the case will become stronger and stronger. So where we are at this time, we are comfortable. We believe that we have sufficient to have effected the arrest, sufficient to lay the charges, and sufficient to move forward with our investigation.
In this morning's session before the Chief Magistrate, despite it being only an arraignment, defense attorney Herbert Panton spoke of several discrepancies in the evidence presented by the police. Outside the courtroom, Panton cited these points and spoke of the possibility of a trial.
Well, they claim that finding burnt remains, and the facts say burnt remains suspected to be that of a human body. They have no facts as to what those remains are, or even if those remains can be connected to the skull that was found. Well, they claim that finding burnt remains, and the facts say burnt remains suspected to be that of a human body. They have no facts as to what those remains are, or even if those remains can be connected to the skull that was found.
Attorney Panton also spoke on the possibility of this case reaching trial in the Supreme Court. He also spoke of the separation of charges between the Belize and Belmopan court jurisdictions.
Well, they claim that finding burnt remains, and the facts say burnt remains suspected to be that of a human body. They have no facts as to what those remains are, or even if those remains can be connected to the skull that was found. Well, they claim that finding burnt remains, and the facts say burnt remains suspected to be that of a human body. They have no facts as to what those remains are, or even if those remains can be connected to the skull that was found.
In the courtroom this morning, Panton told the court that the facts presented yesterday in Belmopan differed from the ones presented this morning, referring to them as convoluted. Meanwhile, Prosecutor Williams presented a chronological order of events, starting with Friday midday when David Dodd, Llewellyn Lucas, and a third individual went to the home of William Mason on Intelco Hill in Belmopan. Whilst at the home, police learned that the men were tied up, duct-taped, and blindfolded and led into a vehicle which traveled for about half hour. They were reportedly taken to Mason's equestrian farm at miles 31 on the George Price Highway. They were then released with the blindfold still intact and ordered to leave the farm and to pretend that the incident never occurred. Upon reaching outside the farm, they realized that Lucas was not with them. The arrest and discovery of Lucas's head came hours later when a police sergeant identified Mason at a bar in Belmopan and called in for backup since he was reportedly wanted by the Belmopan police. The search of his vehicle was subsequently conducted and the bucket which contained the head was found in the pan of his pickup truck. His farm was subsequently searched and suspected human remains were found, which have been sent abroad for testing. Therefore, it is yet to be determined whether the remains are that of Pastor Lucas. The killing of Pastor Llewellyn Lucas is only one part of two investigations being carried out against William Mason. There is a case of kidnapping that occurred some time ago in Belize involving a Canadian couple. In yesterday's press conference, Acting Commissioner Russell Blackett was asked of the status of that investigation.
What happened is we had an attempt kidnapping that occurred almost 2 months ago. That's in the Western District.
Of whom?
Another Canadian and his wife. In short words, like everything else, a lot of deals gone bad. There are a lot of cases we have that you will find that deals were made. Persons try to negotiate, and when it turns bad, it is when they run to the police at the very end. Now, the guy is in Canada, and he will be in country very shortly. And again, what he told us in the first instance, on land in Belize, is something he told us different when he was in Canada. So again, we need to re-interview him to see where the charges will go.
The acting Governor General of Belize, His Excellency Carlos Perdomo, received the letters of credence from the first High Commissioner to Belize from Ghana in the name of His Excellency Lieutenant General Joseph Henry Smith. The meeting took place yesterday at the Belize House in Belmopan. Ambassador Smith presented his open letters to the Minister for Natural Resources and Immigration, Senator Godwin Hulse, who is the acting as Minister of Foreign Affairs. Ambassador Smith also met with Prime Minister Dean Barrow on establishment and strengthening of bilateral cooperation while in Belize. Ambassador Smith paid a courtesy call on His Excellency Jose Prieto Sintalo, the Cuban ambassador to Belize, at his residence. The High Commissioner met with the Ghanaian community in Belize on Tuesday, the 21st June 2016, at the residence of one Mr. Freddie Mansu, a coordinator of the Ghanaian community in Belize. During that meeting, Ambassador Smith expressed his mission's desire to work closely with the Ghanaian community in promoting the welfare of all Ghanaians in Belize and also harnessing support from them for national development efforts. 30 police officers from the Belize Police Department are being trained by police personnel from Roswell, New Mexico. The officers are receiving training in areas of first aid and CPR, defensive tactics, firearms use, and to preparation of reports for better media relations. The training is a collaboration between the Word at Work Christian Ministry and the Belmopan Police. Officers from different parts of the country, such as Benque Viejo, San Ignacio, and serving in different capacities, such as Patrol Unit, Mobile Interaction Team, City Council Traffic, and the Belmopan Police. The Belmopan Police expressed their gratitude at having a long-standing relationship with the police forces in New Mexico, USA. As investigators were looking into a fatal stabbing last night, there was a bomb threat at a grocery store in San Ignacio. Superintendent Richard Rosado shared the details.
On Monday, the 18th of July 2016, about 5 p.m., a caller called the police via 911 and stated that a bomb was placed inside the ABC store. The K9 unit and the Belize Defense Force expert were subsequently dispatched to clear the building, and during the process, no explosive device was found at the store. In normal circumstances, whenever the police receive information of a bomb threat, we would go through the department's standing operating procedure, where people would be evacuated and the bomb expert would be called in to declare the building safe. We are presently trying to identify the register owner of the number that called the 911 hotline.
Investigators are looking to trace the number of the call made in with that threat. The two Bulgarian nationals convicted in June of stealing from the Belize bank remain in country as their case was adjourned in the magistrate court in Belize City. The theft reportedly occurred through withdrawals from the ATM machines, and as a result, 28-year-old Georgi Petrov and 25-year-old Halid Yüksel Abdullah were sentenced to 12 months in prison. Their case before the court this morning, however, is based on an application for confiscation, as explained by their attorney, Christelle Wilson.
Today we came to court to deal with an application that was made by the prosecution for a confiscation order so that the monies that the police had recovered from their home could be kept as part of their case. They are alleging that it's proceeds from the crime, from the theft that occurred at Belize Bank. So we came to court to deal with that today. Unfortunately for my clients, this matter is going to be dragged out a little longer because the translator that the court normally uses was not available, and you know their mother tongue is not English, so in fairness to them, they have to get a translator that they can properly understand what is occurring in the courtroom. So we have been granted an adjournment until the 17th of August, I believe, so that they can find a translator to come to court and we can deal with the application at that time. Actually, we're not arguing delay. We want them to find a translator, and we know for a fact that the court has exhausted all the measures that they could have done to get the translator, so we do not find them in fault. We're actually grateful that in light of not having the translator, they have decided to not proceed with the trial, because it's in the better interest of our clients that they understand what is going on. Even though we try to explain it to them, it's better that they hear it in their mother tongue, that they get a clear understanding, and they don't feel like they are being prejudiced by the procedure that the court is taking.
The case was adjourned to August 17, 2016. The two men were reportedly scamming international bank cards and were in Belize, where they installed hidden cameras at ATMs outside Belize Bank and then making fake credit cards using stolen PIN numbers to make withdrawals. When police searched the residence of the men, they had found 1,100 fake credit cards, 250 blank plastic cards, 2 Nova laptops, $2,100 in Belizean currency, and 2 cell phones, and a Honda Civic 4-door car. The first hearing regarding the Rupert Miles issue and the Toledo Alcalde Association took place today within the Caribbean Court of Justice. The media met up with Christina Cook of the Toledo Alcalde Association outside the courtroom, who spoke on this morning's submissions.
There are 2 separate matters happening today. What we just came out of was a hearing with the Caribbean Court of Justice. Basically what's happening is both parties, both the government and the Maya people, are required to make submissions of reports to the Caribbean Court of Justice, who continues to retain supervision of the implementation process. And both parties have submitted their reports. The Caribbean Court of Justice is basically coming back to hold a hearing with respect to those 2 reports, recent reports that were filed. So that's what we're walking out of right now. With respect to this hearing at the Caribbean Court of Justice, it was by way of teleconference, first of all. The judges were raising issues with respect to complaints on our behalf, us as the appellants, the Maya people, with respect to the ongoing implementation process. We've raised concerns with the way that the commission, which was set up to implement the CCJ order, with the way that they're going about engaging our communities. We raised issues with respect to the funds that were allocated, that were ordered by the court to set aside as a first step to engaging with the Maya people. And then we raised issues with issues and concerns with the fact that the commission doesn't seem to have a roadmap or a work plan, and there's been significant delays in the implementation of the CCJ order, and at the same time there's been significant violations and incursions and interference on Maya people's lands with no protection granted, which was ordered by the CCJ, a protection of those rights under the laws of Belize. The CCJ raised questions with the council who represents the government. The CCJ is asking, how might we find solutions and strategies to bridge this gap? They have noted that there's been a lot of divide, that there's been a lot of mistrust, and that there's lack of confidence in the commissioners to implement the CCJ order. We continue to reiterate that, of course. We are concerned, particularly with the CCJ also raised the concern about whether or not the government would be willing to consider, for instance, an indigenous person to sit on the commission, whether or not the Maya people were actually consulted when the commission was being formed, on the composition of the commission and on the representation on the commission. The CCJ also raised issue with the fact that whether or not the government is considering ways in which they might avoid having civil suits every time a violation happens, every time an incursion happens, to avoid going to court each time these violations happen, because it's costly. It's costly not only to the Maya people but to the government of Belize. And the CCJ order has asked the government to consider setting up a body like an ombudsman, that might have the capacity and the willingness to resolve and give redress to some of these violations. If, as the commission says, they don't have the capacity to do so, then the CCJ is asking the government of Belize to consider instituting a body that might have the capacity to do so.
A second matter was also addressed in the court this morning surrounding two lawsuits filed regarding ongoing violators in Jalacte and Santa Cruz of the rights of the Maya people's rights and resources. The Belize City Council received a proposal that will include aqua sports activities. The company Maya Cable Tubing, operated by Raul Pelayo, intends to establish its operating booth at the Sandlighters Promenade. Mayor of Belize City, Darrell Bradley, says that although he supports the project as it falls well within the master plan drafted for the development of the city, he wants to first have as much public consultation.
Mr. Pelayo introduced the City Council to a rather novel idea in terms of water activities in line with the master plan to be conducted off the coast near Sunlighters Promenade, and it will require that he would use a small space at Sunlighters Promenade. And the council has been considering this proposal for some time, actually several months. I know that we had made a briefing about it previously. I know that Mr. Pelayo had gone on the media previously. And one of the things that we mean to do by this press briefing is to lay out the proposal to the public so that people will be able to understand, appreciate the extent of the project, and so that they would be able to give response, feedback, criticism, and to advise in relation to the direction.
Bradley stated that the project has been green-lighted by several relevant technical agencies. However, Bradley stated that he wants to be on the safe side and get public approval, and will share as many details as possible on the consultation day.
From the point of view of the City Council, we are inclined to give a green light because we're trying to encourage water activities, but we want to ensure that the public has a voice on this. so that Mr. Pelayo most recently attended, I think for the third time, to lobby the council in relation to this matter at our meeting last week. And one of the things that I directed was that there be a public consultation on this. And that consultation is being advertised now, and it will be held tomorrow evening at Sunlighters Promenade from 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. so that we're going to invite members of the public, particularly members of that community and people who use the space, to come out, to view the presentation, to criticize it, to give their objections if they want to object, whatever feedback they want, and then we will table this matter back to council, having gotten a sense of where the public is on there. One of the things that we at the very basic level will insist on is that there cannot be any limitation to the public use of Sunlighters Promenade, so that he needs to construct booths in respect to selling tickets and holding life jackets and so forth. But the primary activity will be in the water, but he is requesting to use a portion of Sunlighters Promenade to construct these kiosks to deal and receive with members of the public. But we have actually asked our engineer to make these things as limited as possible, and Sunlighters Promenade will always remain public access.
Owner and promoter of the project, Raul Pelayo, stated that the project will give a competitive edge to Belize over other tourist destinations.
We want to be one of the first Caribbean countries of Central America to have this project in Belize. Now, if we can put this together, then it's going to be a benefit not only for the locals of the city, but it's going to be a trademark and an opportunity for marketing for our country, so other countries and our neighboring countries can also see all the work that we're putting in. So with your kind support, I would appreciate you guys to come out and ask your questions, because every single question counts. Every advice counts, and it only makes us more prepared and more ready for this industry.
Consultations are scheduled for this week. Residents of Columbia Village, Toledo District, held a gathering today in front of the Ministry of Works compound in Punta Gorda. According to area representative of the Toledo East constituency, Oscar Requena, residents are upset because the streets frequently trafficked by the residents have been neglected, while the ministry has been servicing one road that benefits only one family.
The situation here is that, the villagers of San Pedro, Colombia, along with the leadership of the community, are very much concerned about the fact that, our streets here in the community and our farmers' roads have been abandoned, for the past years. I mean, if you come into San Pedro, Colombia, you're going to see that some of the streets are in a very deplorable condition. It has been raining here. It's very muddy. It's just difficult for people to access their areas because, the Ministry of Works has not upgraded the streets. I mean, they have not put material on the streets. And what has happened is that what has really caused the leadership of the community and members of the community to get upset is that whilst our streets and our roads are abandoned, the Ministry of Works yesterday, started to do some work on one particular road. It's a farmer's road, but really it's not a road that is accessed by a lot of people. It's accessed by one.
Requena also spoke about the response they received from the office and what would be their next steps if their demands are not heard.
We had about 15 people who went because it's only the village council, the alcalde. I mean, let me say this. I want to make it absolutely clear that this is our initial step. We are peaceful. We went, and I made that very clear. We went there, law-abiding citizens. We expressed our concerns, and we are hoping that they are going to address them. If they refuse to address them, then we will take another course of action. I spoke to Mr. Pate, and I must say that, he was... he granted us an audience, and he said that he was taking our concerns and that he was going to pass it on to, to Mr. Guerra, who is the person in charge, and that, they were then going to speak to other people in the ministry to see, whether our concerns could be addressed. But I don't think we were given any definite answer, no? I mean, it's like, well, we are going to talk to them, we are going to share our concerns, we will see what we can do, but absolutely no definite answer and no definite time frame in, as to by when we can expect that, these concerns are going to be addressed.
About 15 people assembled to meet with the Assistant District Supervisor in the Ministry of Works in Punta Gorda. This morning, the Carl Huchner Memorial Hospital received a generous donation of a refurbished waiting room from the Belize Hospital Auxiliary Group. The room, which was previously unattended and unused, was refurbished to become a day waiting area for family of patients that need surgery. President of the hospital auxiliary, Magda Burgos, spoke about the refurbishment and other projects they have undertaken at the hospital in previous years.
Every year we ask the hospital administration to guide us in where they would like the help. And this year they suggested this waiting room. It's called a day room. But we looked at it and we said, well, we're here to serve the public. And so we decided to help out. And we have spent about $11,700 in refurbishing this place. We did new floors, ceilings, walls, everything. The waiting area plus the preparation room, which is right beside it. And I think that the public will greatly benefit from this donation. Last year we did blankets and pillows and refurbishing the chairs for the asthma bay. Stuff that we do on a yearly basis is to help the hospital. But on a continuous basis, every day, we work with the social workers here at the hospital, and they provide us with the needs of the people, as to people who need financial assistance to get medical attention.
The refurbished room is valued at approximately $11,000. A 14-year-old girl is being sought out by her mother. Tishani Bradley of Branchmouth Road, San Ignacio Town, has not returned home since yesterday evening. Her mother, Rosa Mendez, a 43-year-old domestic worker, reported that on that day she had an argument with Tishani because of Facebook and that the girl walked out of the house. She hasn't returned since. Tishani was wearing short jeans pants, a pink sleeveless blouse, and a blue sandals when she was last seen. Tishani is of a fair complexion, has curly hair, is about 5 feet 5 inches tall, and weighs about 120 pounds. The family is asking for anyone to know the whereabouts of Tishani Bradley to contact the nearest police station. Branch was robbed yesterday on the Belize Corozal Road in Orange Walk Town just after midday. According to the cashier, a Hispanic man wearing a light blue polo shirt and a straw hat and sunglasses entered the office, pointed a gun at him, and demanded money. The cashier handed over $1,200 from the cash drawer and handed it to the robber, who then turned around and robbed a customer of $800 whilst robbing another customer of a cellular phone. He reportedly escaped in a white SUV without license plates. Police are seeking 2 men in connection with this incident. The Belize Defense Force Volunteer Battalion will be visited by the Minister of National Security, John Saldiva, on July 25th during their annual camp training exercise. Every year, the Volunteer Battalion conducts a 2-week training during the month of July, where they focus on different types of warfare. This year, the training will be conducted in the Mountain Pine Ridge area, and it will focus on conventional warfare. The soldiers will receive training in first aid, signals, weapon handling, map reading, and different tactics and live firing exercises. The Volunteer Battalion will do a live performance of the skills they have learned on the 25th of July at the junction of George Price Highway and Georgeville Barton Creek Road at 7 p.m. Our thought conditioner for today is from the Dalai Lama. He says, quote, "Our prime purpose in this life is to help others, and if you can't help them, at least don't hurt them." End of quote. This has been the evening news on Love Television, and we invite you to log on to our website at www.lovefm.com for transcripts of our news stories. Thank you for watching. Have a safe and enjoyable evening. I am Taryn Butcher.